They hung the black aviary key around her throat so everyone could watch her not use it. That was Bride Envoy Ysara Vane's idea. The key was old iron, cold even in the heat of the Dragon Palace, and heavy enough to bruise the hollow between Mavelle Sable's collarbones. It had once belonged to the royal swan master, back when the Black Swan Aviary had been honored as a witness house for smoke paths and war messengers. Now, it was treated like a shame bell. Every time Mavelle breathed, the key shifted against her skin. Every time it shifted, someone in the wedding court smiled. "Do not touch it," Ysara said softly, standing beside the white vow altar in a gown, bright enough to make the black glass floor look dirty beneath her. "Your little cinder birds have already stained enough of this ceremony." The court laughed because they were meant to. Mavelle did not lower her head. That was the only rebellion left to her. She stood at the edge of the royal vow hall in a plain, ash-gray dress, her dark hair braided tightly down her back. Cinder dust still caught beneath her fingernails no matter how hard the maids had scrubbed them. She had been ordered to attend Dragon King Vareon Draveth's wedding, not as a guest, not as a servant of honor, but as proof that the shame had been contained. Behind the eastern wall, beyond 3 locked bronze doors, the Cinder Swans beat their wings inside iron cages. Mavelle felt each strike like a pulse under her ribs. They were not beautiful in the way court women praised things. No white feathers, no jeweled necks, no sweet songs for gardens. The Cinder Swans were black as burned paper, with long ember-gray throats, silver beaks darkened at the tips, and eyes like moonstone buried in ash. When frightened, their feathers released smoke. When angered, their wings kindled with black fire. The court called them unlucky. Mavelle called them by name. She had raised them from smoke shells in the abandoned aviary after the last swan master died, and no noble house wanted the duty. She had warmed cracked eggs in her sleeves. She had fed the hatchlings cinder grain from her own supper bowl. She had learned which swan snapped when afraid, which one hid its face beneath its wing, which one remembered a path after crossing it only once. That was the secret no one important cared to remember. Cinder Swans did not simply fly. They remembered every path taken through smoke and flame. They did not choose brides. They did not bless kings. They followed paths that liars thought smoke had swallowed. But the court had grown clean and ceremonial and stupid. They wanted white banners, gold vows, and a bride without shadows. So, when Ysara Vane claimed the Cinder Swans brought shame to her wedding, Dragon King Vareon Draveth ordered them caged before the vow rite. He had not looked cruel when he gave the order. That had made it worse. A cruel man was easier to hate. Vareon had looked tired, cold, and politically trapped, with his black crown resting over dark hair and his dragon gold eyes fixed on the treaty envoys filling the hall. His wedding was not a love match. Everyone knew that. Ysara Vane had arrived from the Western Fire Courts, carrying peace terms, border promises, and the kind of smile that made surrender sound like wisdom. When she said the Cinder Swans would make foreign envoys think the Dragon Court blessed bad omens, Vareon had turned to Mavelle and said, "Cage them until the vows are complete." Mavelle had asked only one question. Will they have heir? Ysara's smile had sharpened. The court had remembered that question all morning because it revealed that Mavelle cared more about breathing birds than royal pride. "Look at her," whispered Lady Norelle from behind a fan of white feathers. "She still listens for them. She thinks those birds are children." "No," another voice murmured. "She thinks they are witnesses." That made the laughter quieter, not because anyone believed it, because old words still had old teeth. Across the hall, Dragon King Vareon Draveth stood before the vow altar with one hand resting near the 3 treaty seals laid on black velvet. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and motionless in a way that made every armed man in the chamber seem decorative. Ember gold embroidery marked the sleeves of his black wedding robe. Thin dragonfire sigils glowed faintly along his throat, pulsing once before they dimmed. Mavelle noticed. She'd always noticed heat that failed. The treaty seals near his hand were small, no larger than coins, but they were carved from old dragon bone and filled with living crown fire. One seal for the western border, one for the smoke roads, one for aerial passage over the old mountain teeth. If the wedding vows were completed, the seals would bind Ysara's house to Vareon's crown. If the seals were stolen before the vow closed, the kingdom would not merely be embarrassed, it would be opened. Mavelle looked away before anyone could see her understanding too much. Ysara was watching her. The bride envoy's beauty was polished and cold, pale hair beneath flame, silk, soft lips shaped for ceremony, eyes bright with calculation. She held a white vow candle in both hands. Its flame should have leaned toward Vareon. It leaned toward the eastern wall, toward the aviary. Mavelle's fingers twitched near the key. Ysara saw. "Careful," she said, voice sweet enough for nearby nobles to hear. "One more act of disobedience, and His Majesty may finally understand that pity has kept the wrong ward in his palace." There it was. Ward. Not keeper. Not witness. Not Mavelle Sable, who had spent 12 years in royal corridors after her father died carrying smoke messages for the crown. The palace had not adopted her. It had stored her, fed her, because loyalty looked better when it did not starve its orphans. Used her because unwanted creatures trusted unwanted girls. Vareon's gaze moved toward them. For one dangerous second, Mavelle thought he might speak. He did not. The vowmaster lifted his staff. "Bring forward the bride." The hall rose in a wave of silk and armor. Music began. Low and ceremonial, played on bronze pipes shaped like dragon ribs. Ysara turned toward the altar with flawless grace. Then, behind the eastern wall, every cinder swan stopped beating its wings. The silence struck Mavelle harder than the noise had. She lifted her head. No one else noticed at first. The court watched Ysara. The vowmaster watched Vareon. Vareon watched the treaty seals. Mavelle watched the candle flame in Ysara's hands. It bent sideways, not toward Vareon, not toward the vows, toward smoke. A thin black line curled beneath Ysara's veil, almost invisible against the white silk. Mavelle's breath caught. The Cinder Swans had gone silent because they were listening. Someone had opened a smoke path. Not in the aviary. Under the vow hall, Ysara took one step toward the altar. Then the white flame of her vow candle turned black. The music faltered. A gasp spread through the nearest rows. Ysara's eyes widened, not in fear, in fury. She closed her fingers around the candle, as if trying to smother the color, but black smoke spilled between them and crawled across the floor in a narrow line. It did not drift like ordinary smoke. It moved with direction. A path. Mavelle grabbed the key. The iron bit into her palm. Ysara spun toward her. "Do not." That single word told her more than any confession could have. Vareon heard it too. His gold eyes narrowed. "What have you done?" he asked. The question should have been for Ysara. The court turned toward Mavelle. Of course they did. Bride envoy Ysara staggered backward, one hand to her throat, the blackened candle falling from her fingers. "The swans," she whispered, perfectly timed, perfectly pale. She let their curse into the vows. "No," Mavelle said, but the old court machinery had already begun to move. "The aviary ward broke the rite, the Cinder Swans warned us. Seize her!" 2 guards stepped toward Mavelle. Vareon raised one hand. They stopped, not because he had chosen her, because a Dragon King did not like anyone reaching for answers before he did. The black smoke line slid across the floor between them, past the altar, past Ysara's fallen candle, toward the eastern wall. Then the bronze doors to the Black Swan Aviary shook. Once, twice, a third time. From beyond them came the sound of wings unfolding in cages that had been locked by royal command. Mavelle's hand closed around the key hanging from her throat. Vareon looked at the doors, then at Mavelle. His voice was low. "Did you open them?" "No," Isara whispered. "Liar." The bronze doors buckled outward. Black fire burst through the cracks. The court screamed as the Cinder Swans broke from their cages in a storm of burning shadow, their wings trailing dark flame across the ceiling of the vow hall. They did not attack. They did not scatter. They flew in a perfect spiral above the altar, over Vareon's crown, over Ysara's empty place beside him. Empty. Mavelle saw it before the court did. Bride envoy Ysara Vane was no longer standing where she had been. Only her white veil remained on the black glass floor. The Cinder Swans screamed once, and black fire drew a hidden route across the ceiling. A passage beneath the altar, through the smoke drains, toward the treaty vault. Then the 3 dragonfire treaty seals vanished from their velvet cloth. No one chased Ysara Vane first. They turned on Mavelle Sable. That was how courts survived their own blindness. By choosing the nearest powerless throat and calling it justice before truth could find a door. The vow hall roared around her. Nobles backed from the black fire drawn across the ceiling. Guards shouted over one another, and the bronze pipes that had played wedding music fell silent with one final dying note. Above them, the Cinder Swans circled in a storm of ember-dark wings, their black flames not burning the roof, only marking it with a path no human hand could have drawn. Beneath the altar, through the smoke drains, toward the treaty vault, and on the black velvet before Dragon King Vareon Draveth, the 3 dragonfire treaty seals were gone. Mavelle still held the aviary key against her palm. The iron had cut her skin. That was enough for the court. She opened the cages. The key is in her hand. Seize the ward before she sends the birds, after the envoys. 2 flame guards came at her from either side. Mavelle did not run. Running would give them the shape of guilt they wanted. She stood with the key pressed in her bleeding palm and watched Vareon instead. He had not moved from the altar. That made him more frightening. His bride was gone. His treaty seals had vanished. His vow hall was marked by black fire. Yet the Dragon King stood utterly still, his dragon gold eyes moving from the empty velvet cloth to the smoke path overhead, then down to Mavelle's hand. "Did the key open the aviary?" he asked. No apology. No shock wasted on her innocence. Only the first hard question. Mavelle's mouth tightened. "No," a noblewoman snapped. "She lies." Mavelle turned her head slightly. "If I had meant to free them, I would not have waited until your bride disappeared." The words cut through the hall. Vareon's gaze sharpened. Not approval. Attention. The Cinder Swans wheeled once above him. They did not descend. They did not attack. They did not choose a side. Their wings burned black lines through the smoke, deepening the route across the ceiling until every person in the vow hall could see where Ysara's path had gone. A captain of guards pointed upward. "They obey her." "No," Mavelle said. "They do not obey me. They remember paths," the captain sneered. "Convenient. Truth usually is, when someone hates where it leads." One of the swans screamed. The sound was not beautiful. It was long, cracked, and full of smoke, like a door opening in a burned house. The black fire route shivered overhead, then narrowed over the altar's base. Vareon followed the line with his eyes. "The smoke drain," he said. No one answered. The vowmaster, pale as wax, gripped his staff. Impossible. The altar drains were sealed before the rite. Mavelle looked at the fallen vow candle. Its white wax had melted into a black pool on the glass floor. Smoke still leaked from it in a thin, deliberate thread, crawling not upward but downward, toward the seam beneath the altar stones. "Not by stone," she said. Vareon looked at her. "Explain." She hated that command. She hated more that it was the only thing standing between her and a dungeon. "Cinder Swans remember paths, through smoke and flame," she said. "If smoke enters a locked passage, they can follow where it went. They are not showing what they want, they are showing what passed. A guard said. Then she sent the smoke. Mavelle lifted the key from her throat and held it out flat on her bloody palm. This opens bronze and iron, not smoke drains, not vow candles. Vareon crossed the black glass floor toward her, the hall quieted in widening rings. Up close, the Dragon King seemed less like a groom and more like a blade drawn too slowly. Ember gold fire flickered beneath the skin at his throat. His face was controlled, but rage lived beneath the stillness. Not wild rage, not grief, something colder and more dangerous because it had found nothing yet to strike. He looked at the key, then at the eastern doors. Bring the lock. The command fell like iron. 2 guards ran to the aviary entrance. They returned carrying the outer lock still hanging from its broken bronze plate. Black soot marked the metal around the keyhole, but the keyhole itself was untouched. Vareon took the lock. Mavelle watched his thumb pass over the opening where her key should have turned. No scrape, no fresh iron bite, no pattern from the old teeth. Her breath steadied. Vareon saw it too. The key did not open this, he said. The lock bore smoke burn around its hinge, but no fresh bite from the key's old teeth. The court shifted. Just a little. Enough to show that blame had stumbled, not fallen. The vowmaster leaned forward. Then what did? Before anyone answered, one of the Cinder Swans dropped from the ceiling. Not toward Vareon. Not toward Mavelle. It landed on the broken bronze lock. The bird was sleek and black, with ash-gray throat feathers and eyes like burned moonstone. Its wings smoked at the edges, not from injury, but from memory. It lowered its beak to the lock seam and breathed. Black fire entered the crack. The metal did not melt. It remembered. A thin line of dark flame crawled backward across the lock plate, around the hinge, and into the charred marks near the outer edge. The fire gathered there, where no key could have reached. Mavelle whispered. Outside. Vareon looked at her. The aviary doors were open from outside, she said. A murmur passed through the hall, sharp and disbelieving. The guard captain stiffened. No one was outside the aviary. The eastern service corridor was sealed for the wedding. Mavelle looked up at the ceiling, where the black fire route still curved beneath the altar, through the smoke drains, and toward the treaty vault. Not the corridor, she said. Smoke. The fallen vow candle hissed. Every head turned. The black wax on the floor trembled, then pulled itself into a thin ribbon and slid beneath the altar seam. Above, the Cinder Swans widened their spiral. Their fire marked the route again, brighter this time, showing a line from Asara's candle to the altar drain, from the drain to the underpass, from the underpass to the hidden treaty vault. Vareon's face changed, barely, but Mavelle saw it. The king had understood the shape of the theft. Asara had not fled after the vows failed. She had built the failure as the door. A bride with a vow candle could stand before every witness in the realm and open a smoke path under their feet while the court stared at the unwanted ward holding the wrong key. Then a voice rose from the western envoys. Or the ward taught her birds to draw lies. Lord Mavelle Sable, Asara's uncle and chief witness, stepped forward in a cloak of silver flame thread. His grief looked practiced before it had even found his face. The bride. Envoy is missing, he said. The treaty seals are gone. And the ward's cursed swans blacken the ceiling with paths only she claims to understand. Majesty, do not let an aviary girl turn the court against your promised bride. Mavelle looked at him. Your promised bride told me not to open a door I had not touched. Maravin's eyes hardened. Vareon noticed that too. Not enough, but he noticed. The Cinder Swan, on the broken lock, lifted its wings. Black fire streamed from its feathers and burned across the inside of the bronze plate. Letters formed. Not many. The swans did not explain motives. They remembered movement. Aviary lock opened by vow candle smoke. Vareon looked from the burned words to the black wax still crawling beneath the altar seam. Then he looked at the empty velvet where the treaty seals had been. If smoke opened the aviary, he said, Then what opened my treaty vault? Mervyn Vane answered before Mavelle could. What opened your treaty vault? He said, stepping between the blackened altar and the eyes of the court. Is a question for loyal men, Majesty, not for a girl who keeps cursed birds and calls their smoke memory. The vow hall quieted in the wrong way, not with reason, with relief. The court wanted Mervyn to be right. It was easier to fear Mavelle Sable than to admit bride envoy Ysara Vane had vanished from the center of the Dragon King's wedding with 3 living treaty seals. Above them, the Cinder Swans circled lower now. Their black fire no longer cut cleanly across the ceiling. It flickered at the edges, thinning into smoke. They had broken cages, marked the path, and burned truth into bronze. That had cost them. Their wings beat slower, each movement leaving only a fading streak of dark flame. Mavelle felt it in her chest. They were not endless proof. They were living creatures. Vareon Draveth looked at the black wax still crawling beneath the altar seam. His hand rested near the empty velvet where the seals had been. Open the altar drain, he said. Mervyn's face tightened. Majesty, to disturb the vow altar before the bride is found would insult the Western Treaty. Vareon did not look at him. The Western Treaty has already been insulted. The bride envoy may be in danger. Then, we follow the path she left. Mervyn bowed slightly, but his voice remained smooth. Or the path this ward's swans invented. Mavelle looked at him. They remember passage. They do not invent doors. His eyes hardened. Vareon heard the line. He did not defend her. He did not apologize for the key still bruising her throat. He only turned to the flame guards. Lift the altar stone. The guards hesitated. No one liked touching a vow altar during a broken wedding rite. But Vareon was still the Dragon King, and his silence was more dangerous than ceremony. Iron hooks were brought. The black glass floor around the altar was cleared. 2 guards pried up the central vow stone while the court watched from a widening circle. Underneath was a narrow smoke drain. It should have been clean. It was not. Black wax clung to the inner rim like melted night. A thin trail of ash ran downward into the darkness below, marked by faint curls of white bride candle smoke. Mavelle stepped forward. A guard blocked her. Vareon's eyes moved to him. Let her look. Mavelle did not thank him. She knelt beside the drain, careful not to touch the wax. The key at her throat swung forward and struck the edge of the altar stone with a small iron sound. That sound made several nobles glance at it again. The shame key. The useless proof. The thing they had used to accuse her now hung untouched, while the real path breathed smoke beneath the bride's altar. Mavelle leaned closer. Bride, candle wax. The vowmaster swallowed. All vow candles are blessed. This one was taught a path. Mervyn laughed softly. Candles do not learn. No, Mavelle said, but smoke does what it is given permission to do. Vareon crouched across from her, close enough that she could feel the controlled heat of him. Permission from whom? Mavelle looked at the drain. Someone with access to the altar before the rite. Someone allowed to stand here with a candle in both hands. Someone no guard would search. The court's silence sharpened. Mervyn said, You are accusing the bride while she is missing. I am reading smoke, while everyone else reads rank. For the first time, Vareon's gaze stayed on her longer than a command required. Then one cinder swan dropped from the ceiling and landed near the open drain. Its black feathers trembled. Smoke leaked from its wings in weak strands. Mavelle's fingers twitched, wanting to gather it close. Don't spend more, she whispered. The swan lowered its beak anyway. It breathed one thin line of black fire into the drain. The darkness below answered. A route appeared, not above the hall this time, but inside the open stone. A thin trail burning down the drain wall, across an underpass, then splitting toward the treaty vault. The flame struck something unseen and flared white gold at the edge. Vareon stood. Bring the vault seal. A gourd ran. Maravon's composure held, but only because men like him trained their faces before they trained their hearts. The guard returned carrying a small obsidian seal plate from the treaty vault door. Its royal key mark was untouched. No scrape, no break, no crown fire fracture. Vareon held it under the swan's dying black flame. Nothing appeared at the royal key mark. Then the underside of the seal plate smoked. Mavelle's breath caught. "Turn it over," Vareon did. Black wax had burned into the hidden lower seam, where no royal key would ever touch. The smoke had not opened the vault from the front. It had entered from beneath, through the drain, through the bride candle path. The treaty vault was opened from inside the smoke drain, Mavelle said. The words traveled through the hall like a blade passing from hand to hand. Mavelle stepped forward. "Or, her birds are trained to mark whatever surface she names." Mavelle looked up at him. "If I could train them that well, I would have trained them not to suffer in cages for your niece's comfort." The cinder swan near the drain staggered. Mavelle caught it before it fell. Its body was hot and light in her hands. Too light. The black fire along its wings dimmed to smoke. Vareon saw the bird weaken. So did the court. But Mavelle seized the moment. "See? It goes to her. It serves her." Mavelle held the swan carefully against her chest. "It trusts me because I fed it when your court wanted it starved." Vareon looked from the weak swan to the open drain, then to the seal plate in his hand. His jaw tightened. Who had bride? Candle access before the rite. The vow-master went pale. Mavelle said quickly, "Every sacred candle was prepared under Western witness." "Names," Vareon said. Before the vow-master could answer, the cinder swan in Mavelle's arms lifted its head and breathed once more. Black fire touched the underside of the obsidian seal plate. Letters formed across the hidden seam. Treaty vault opened by bride candle access. The vow-master lost color before he lost speech. His eyes fixed on the black letters burned across the underside of the vault seal plate. Treaty vault opened by bride candle access. For one breath, the entire hall seemed to understand the danger of those words. Not accusation. Access. A door given politely to someone no one had thought to search. Then Mavelle Vane stepped into the silence and tried to close it. "Majesty," he said. "Bride. Candle access belongs to ritual law. To twist it into suspicion while my niece is missing is an insult to every Western witness in this chamber." Mavelle held the weakened cinder swan against her chest. Its head lay beneath her chin, smoke leaking faintly from its folded wings. She could feel its heartbeat, quick and frightened. "Your niece vanished with the seals," she said. Mavelle looked at her as if she had stained the air. "My niece was taken during a cursed disturbance caused by your birds. They were caged, and yet they broke free when you needed them." Mavelle's fingers tightened around the swan, careful not to hurt it. "No, they broke free when smoke reached them. Dragon King Vareon Draveth did not apologize. He did not soften the key still hanging like a bruise at her throat." He looked at the vow-master. "Who prepared Isara's candle?" The old man swallowed. "The sacred wax was poured by temple hands. The final wick was sealed under Western witness." "Names." Maravon's jaw shifted. "Majesty." Vareon turned his head. The court went still. The vow-master bowed quickly. Bride Envoy Isara Vane received the candle from her private chamber. Lord Mavelle witnessed the seal. Murmurs moved like knives through silk. Maraven's grief hardened. As tradition requires. Mavelle looked down at the black wax, still creeping along the altar seam. "Tradition does not make smoke crawl downward." Vareon's gaze cut to her. "Can the swans follow the wax farther?" The swan in her arms stirred, trying to lift its head. "No," Mavelle said. The answer was for the bird, not the king. Vareon heard the difference. Mavelle looked at him. "They have already spent too much. They are not lanterns for your court to shake until the truth falls out." A few nobles hissed at her tone. Vareon did not. His face remained controlled, but his eyes moved to the bird's trembling wings. "Then you read what is here." It was still a command, but it was closer to the right one. Mavelle knelt by the fallen vow candle. The black wax had cooled at the edges, but its center still smoked. She did not touch it with bare fingers. She reached for a silver altar knife and scraped a thin layer from the surface. The smell struck her first. Not only candle fat, not only temple resin, feather, burned feather hidden under white perfume. Her stomach tightened. She looked toward the eastern wall, toward the Black Swan Aviary beyond the broken bronze doors. Vareon noticed. "What?" Mavelle kept her voice steady. "This candle was fed with cinder feather." Mavelle gave a sharp laugh. Now she invents ingredients. Mavelle lifted the scraped wax on the knife. Cinder swan feathers do not burn like ordinary feathers. They remember the last smoke they crossed. If ground into a wick, the candle can carry a path without the bird flying it. The hall recoiled. That was the first time the court looked not only afraid of the swans, but afraid for them. Mavelle recovered quickly. Convenient knowledge from the girl who raised them. "Yes," Mavelle said. "Knowledge from the girl who would know if someone cut feathers from frightened birds." The swan in her arms shivered hard. Vareon's gaze moved to the broken aviary doors. Were feathers taken? Mavelle's throat tightened. She had not been allowed inside after the cages were locked. She had listened from outside, heard wings beat iron, heard panic, heard one sharp cry she had told herself was fear and not pain, because there had been nothing she could do with the truth. "I need to see the cages," she said. Mavelle stepped forward. "Absolutely not. She should be confined." Vareon's voice dropped. "She will see the cages. And if she destroys evidence?" Mavelle looked at Mavelle. "Your evidence is already hanging around my throat." That silenced him for half a breath. Not enough, but enough for Vareon to gesture toward the eastern doors. The procession moved through the vow hall like a wound opening. Guards first, then Vareon, then Mavelle with the weakened swan in her arms. The court followed at a cautious distance. Above them, the remaining cinder swans circled once, then settled on the black rafters, too tired to burn more paths. The Black Swan Aviary smelled of iron, smoke, and fear. The cages hung in 3 rows from bronze beams. Several doors were bent outward, broken by force from inside after the smoke reached them, but one cage near the back remained closed. Mavelle stopped. Her heart sunk. It was Neth's cage. Neth was the smallest male, nervous around strangers, easy to frighten, slow to bite. He had always hidden his head beneath one wing when court voices rose. Now his cage floor was scattered, with black feathers cut close to the quill. Mavelle set the swan in her arms gently on a perch and walked to the cage. The lock was still sealed. The door had never opened. Someone had reached through the bars. She lifted one cut feather. The quill end was sliced clean. Not torn. Not shed. Taken. Vareon stood behind her. "Mavelle." She hated how her name sounded in his mouth now that he needed her. She held up the feather. "This is what opened your smoke path." The caged swan inside trembled in the corner, one wing stripped along the edge. Mavelle's face did not break. Her voice did. "Your bride did not fear them," she said. "She used them," Mavelle said. "That proves nothing." Then the cut feather in Mavelle's hand smoked black. The nearby cinder swans lifted their heads, not strong enough to fly, but strong enough to remember injury. A thin line of dark fire burned along the feather shaft. Letters appeared in the air above Neth's closed cage. Bride candle wick, fed with cinder swan feather. Neth tried to hide his stripped wing. That hurt Mavelle more than the court's shouting. The smallest cinder swan crouched in the far corner of the sealed cage, black eyes bright with fear, one wing tucked too tightly against his body. The cut feathers scattered across the cage floor still smoked faintly. and the words they had burned above the bars hung in the aviary air like a sentence no one wanted to read twice. Bride candle wick, fed with cinder swan feather. Mavelle Vane's voice turned colder. A feather proves only that a bird was used, not who used it. Mavelle did not look at him. She kept her eyes on Neth.
Of course that is what you would say.
You raised them. Mavelle pressed. You knew their feathers could carry smoke memory. You knew the vow candle would be near the altar. You had motive to ruin a wedding that caged your pets. Mavelle turned then. The word pets had done what his accusation had not. They are not decorations I loved too much, she said. They are living witnesses your court hated until their pain became useful. A few nobles looked away. Not enough. Dragon King Vareon Draveth stood behind her, black wedding robes dark against the cinder-lit aviary. He had not apologized for ordering the cages. He had not removed the key from her bruised throat, but he was watching the cage now with the stillness of a man who understood that the wound had begun before the evidence appeared. When were these cages sealed? He asked. The guard captain bowed. At dawn, Majesty. By your order. Mavelle's jaw tightened. Vareon heard it. He did not soften. Who held the key after that? The captain glanced at the old iron key hanging from Mavelle's neck. The key was taken from the aviary office and placed on the ward under court witness before the rite. Before or after dawn? After, Majesty. Near the third bell. Mavelle looked at Neth's cage. Dalm. Third bell. The feather cutting had happened in the locked aviary between those 2 moments, while the swans were already caged, and before the court hung the key around her throat as shame. Mavelle spoke quickly. A keeper could have used another tool. Mavelle stepped closer to the cage. Not through these bars. She lifted the cut feather again and held it beside the iron gap. The quill was too wide to pass cleanly without bending. Whoever cut it had not pulled it out through the front. They had reached from the side. Vareon followed her gaze. There, near the cage hinge, was a narrow service slot hidden under an ornamental bronze scale. It was meant for water trays. Small, unnoticed, not opened with the aviary key. Mavelle touched the edge of it. Black wax stained the seam. Her breath slowed. Bride. Candle smoke, she said. Mavelle snapped. You see it everywhere because you want to. No, she said. Because your niece put it everywhere. The court stirred sharply. Vareon's voice cut through them. Open the service slot. The captain obeyed. The bronze scale lifted with a thin creak. Inside the slot, black wax had dried in a crescent shape, sealing ash to metal. The wax did not smell like ordinary soot. It carried temple resin, bride perfume, and burned feather. Mavelle looked at Vareon. The cage door stayed locked. The swans were still prisoners. Someone sent smoke through the service slot, frightened Neth to the bars, cut his feathers, and used them in the candlewick. Vareon's jaw tightened. Could Isara do this herself? Mavelle wanted to say yes. She did not. Truth did not become stronger because anger dressed it. She could prepare the candle. She could carry the smoke. But someone had to enter the aviary before the rite, or know this slot existed. Mavelle said. Convenient restraint. Mavelle looked at him. No. Uncomfortable truth. You should try it. A dangerous silence followed. Then Vareon looked at the captain. Who entered the aviary between dawn and third bell? The captain's face went pale. No one recorded, Majesty. Mavelle closed her eyes briefly. Of course. No one important, she said. Vareon turned to her. The record means no one important entered, she said. It does not mean no one came. From the rafters, a cinder swan gave a weak cry. Not a scream. A warning. Mavelle looked up. The swan above them spread its wings, but no black fire came. Only smoke fell from its feathers in slow strands. The birds were too tired to ride another full path. Don't, Mavelle whispered, but the smoke did not become words. It drifted to the floor and curled around a small object beneath the cage stand. A broken bead. White, pearl glass. Not from the aviary. Mavelle picked it up. Maraven's face changed so quickly that almost no one saw. Almost. Vareon did. "What is it?" he asked. Mavelle rolled the bead between her fingers. "Bride veil bead," Maraven said. "Half the women in the vow hall wear veil beads. This one is smoke, burned from the inside." She held it toward the nearest flame. The bead darkened, and a thin black line appeared through its center, like smoke trapped in glass. Vareon took it from her without touching her fingers. His dragonfire sigil flared faintly near his wrist. The bead answered. Black fire flashed inside the pearl glass, and for a heartbeat, an image appeared. A pale gloved hand lifting the service slot before the third bell, a white veil brushing the cage bars, Neth recoiling into the corner. Then the image vanished. The aviary fell silent. Maraven's voice came too fast. "Memory tricks. Bird smoke. Wardcraft." Mavelle looked at the cage, then at the key still hanging uselessly from her throat. "They hung the key on me after the feather was taken," she said. Vareon looked from the bead to the cut feathers, then to the old iron key. For the first time, the shame key no longer looked like proof against her. It looked like preparation. The cinder swan above them gathered one last thread of smoke and burned it across the inside of Neth's cage. Feather taken before key was given. The feather mark did not silence the court. It changed the kind of noise they made. No one shouted, "Seize her now." No one dared, but whispers spread through the Black Swan Aviary like smoke under a door. Before the key, before the rite, before the shame was hung around Mavelle Sable's throat, feather taken before key was given. The words burned inside Neth's cage, thin and dark, while the smallest cinder swan trembled in the corner with his stripped wing tucked close to his body. Mavelle wanted to open the cage. She did not. Not yet. If she touched the lock too soon, someone would call it tampering. If she waited too long, Neth would keep shaking behind bars, placed there by a king's order. That was the cruelty of powerless innocence. Even mercy had to ask permission. Dragon King Vareon Draveth looked at the old key on Mavelle's throat, then at the service slot, then at the cut feather in her hand. "Remove the key from her," he said. The hall stiffened. A guard stepped forward. Mavelle's hand closed around the iron before he could touch it. No. Vareon's eyes found hers. The court drew a breath. Mavelle lifted her chin. "You hung it there to make me visible. Leave it there until everyone understands what it failed to open." For a moment, something moved across Vareon's face. Not apology. Recognition. He lowered his hand. "Then it stays." Maraven Vane's mouth tightened. "Majesty, this is becoming theater." "No," Mavelle said. "The theater was your niece vanishing under a wedding veil while I held the wrong key." Maraven turned cold. "Careful, Ward." Vareon looked at him. "Careful, witness." That quieted the aviary faster than any roar. Above them, the cinder swans shifted on the rafters. Their black feathers smoked faintly, but none flew down. They had spent too much marking proof for people who should have listened the first time. Mavelle looked at Neth's cage. "Open it." The guard captain hesitated. Vareon said, "Open it." The cage door groaned wide. Neth did not come out. Mavelle stepped back instead of reaching in. "No one grabs him." A noble scoffed softly. "It is a bird." Mavelle did not turn. "So is every feather used to open your treaty vault." Neth watched her. His moonstone eyes blinked once. Then he limped forward, one slow step, then another, until he crossed the threshold by choice. Mavelle knelt, offering her wrist but not closing her fingers. The swan pressed his beak against her sleeve. Only then did she breathe. Vareon watched that small act as if it showed him a language his court had never taught him. "We follow the smoke drain," he said. Maraven moved at once. "Majesty, the underpass is unsafe. If Ysara was taken, whoever did it, may still be below. If she was taken, Vareon said, the path will show it. Mavelle looked up. The swans cannot keep burning it for you. I know. Do you? The words left her before fear could stop them. Vareon's gaze sharpened, but he did not punish the tone. Then you read it. Mavelle rose with Neth close at her side. Am I guiding truth? Or are you chasing pride? The question struck him harder than accusation. His bride had fled. His seals were missing. His court was watching. Pride would be easier than truth. Vareon answered after a dangerous pause. If I chase pride, correct me. Mavelle almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because kings always believed correction was a door they could open whenever they chose. They rarely understood how many people had been punished for touching the handle. She said only, then keep your guards behind me. They returned to the vow hall and opened the altar drain fully. A narrow stair descended beneath the black glass floor, hidden inside the smoke channel. Cold air rose from below, carrying bride perfume, burned feather, and old ash. Mavelle stepped down first. The key struck softly against her chest with each movement. Vareon followed close enough that his heat warmed the stone behind her. Not close enough to touch. The underpass was low and ribbed with old dragon bone arches. Smoke stains crawled along the ceiling in layered lines. Old routes, forgotten rites, servant passages, messenger trails. Mavelle read them the way other women read embroidery. There, she said, touching the air near a fresh black curl. Bride, candle smoke. Vareon leaned closer. And that? Cinder feather memory. A little farther on, the smoke trail split. One path led toward the treaty vault. The other led west, not toward escape, toward the guest wing assigned to Mavelle Vane's envoys. Mavelle stopped. Vareon saw the split and went still. Behind them, Maraven's voice echoed from the stair. Majesty, has the ward found another convenient shadow? Mavelle did not answer him. She looked at the wall where the western path began. The smoke there was thicker, folded around a shape pressed into soot. A signet mark, oval and sharp, edged. Vareon lifted one hand, and dragonfire glowed over his knuckles. The mark brightened. Not Isara's, Maraven's. The underpass wall exhaled black smoke, and the fresh trail burned into one clear line. Bride candle path passed through Maraven's witness seal. Mavelle Vane did not denude the mark. He smiled at it. That frightened Mavelle more than anger would have. The underpass held the silence after the burned words, low and cold beneath the vow hall, its dragonbone arches ribbed with old soot. Black smoke clung to the wall where the fresh trail had written itself around an oval signet mark. Bride candle path passed through Maraven's witness seal. Behind them, guards shifted their hands on their spears. Above, the court waited in the broken wedding hall. Ahead, the smoke trail divided. One path toward the treaty vault, one toward the western guest wing. Mavelle descended the last steps with perfect control. My witness seal was assigned to the wedding rite, Majesty. Of course it appears near treaty smoke. That is what witness seals do. Mavelle looked at him. They witness doors. They do not become them. His eyes cut to her. And now the aviary ward lectures diplomats on treaty law. No, she said. I am reading the smoke your law left behind. Vareon stood beside the mark, his face hard in the faint glow of his dragonfire. He had not apologized to Mavelle. He had not touched the key at her throat. But he was no longer looking at it. First, show me your ring, he said. Maraven's smile thinned. Majesty, your witness seal. A pause. Small. Fatale. Then Mavelle drew off his glove and lifted his right hand. The ring on his finger was silver black, carved with the Vane crest. A narrow flame split by a closed eye. Its surface looked clean. Too clean. Mavelle stepped closer before fear could stop her. Vareon looked at her. What do you see? She hated how quickly the court would call her useful, now that blaming her had become harder. Still, she answered, smoke has no respect for polish. Maravan's jaw tightened. Mavelle held her hand near the ring without touching it. Neth, limping at her side, lifted his stripped wings slightly and released a weak thread of smoke. Not fire, not writing, only breath. The smoke curled toward the ring and gathered under the crest. Black wax seeped from the carved eye. The guards murmured. Maravan closed his fist. Vareon's voice dropped. Open your hand. Maravan obeyed. But slowly. Mavelle saw the truth then. A hairline groove beneath the ring's crest, packed with bride. Candle wax. Not enough to be seen in ceremony. Enough to carry smoke into a sealed passage. This ring did not witness the path, she said. It fed it. Maravan lauchet once. Absurd. Vareon held out his hand. The ring. Majesty. This is Western diplomatic property. My seals are Dragon Court blood. Property. The ring came off. Not willingly. Vareon took it and held it over the smoke mark on the wall. His dragonfire flared along his knuckles, and the ring answered with a thin hiss. Black wax bubbled from the groove and fell onto the stone. The smoke trail brightened. Not toward the treaty vault, toward the western guest wing. Mavelle's breath tightened. The second door, she whispered. Vareon looked at her. The bride candle opened the first path under the altar, she said. Maravan's witness ring opened the second. That is why the smoke split. Maravan's voice sharpened. Or your birds are dying to invent another lie. Mavelle looked down at Neth. The small Cinder Swan trembled on his injured feet. His stripped wing hung lower now. He had no black fire left in him, but he leaned against Mavelle's skirt as if staying upright mattered because she had asked him to live. They are not inventing, she said. They are barely standing. For the first time, Vareon looked at the swan before he looked at the evidence. A small change. Not enough, but real. Carry him, he said to one guard. Mavelle's eyes flashed. No. The guard froze. Vareon turned back to her. He walks if he chooses, Mavelle said. If he cannot, I carry him. The underpass went silent. Then Vareon gave one short nod. Mavelle bent and lifted Neth herself. The swan settled against her arm, light with exhaustion. They followed the western smoke trail. It led through a narrow service passage, then up a hidden stair behind guest tapestries embroidered with silver fire. At the top stood a small diplomatic antechamber, assigned to Maravan's party. The door was sealed from the outside. Vareon broke it with one word. Open. The lock sparked and released. Inside, the chamber was empty, except for travel chests, folded cloaks, and a ceremonial coffer beneath a table. The coffer was Western-made, whitewood bound in silver flame thread. Maravan's face changed. Only Mavelle saw the first crack. Vareon saw the second. Open it, the king said. Maravan stepped forward. That coffer carries private treaty garments. Then your garments will forgive me. The guard captain opened it. Inside lay folded white silk. Nuisada, no treaty seals. For one breath, Maravan almost won the room back. Then Mavelle smelled it. Dragonfire, hidden under perfume. She set Neth gently on the table and lifted the silk with the altar knife. Beneath it, the bottom of the coffer was blackened in 3 round marks, coin-sized, seal-sized. Vareon went still. Mavelle looked at him. They were here, Maravan said. Heat marks prove nothing. Dragon halls burn everything. Mavelle touched the air above the 3 marks. Not like this. Living crown. Fire leaves breath. Neth lifted his head. No, Mavelle whispered. But the Cinder Swan opened his beak and released one final thread of smoke into the coffer. The 3 dark circles lit with black fire. Letters burned across the whitewood bottom. 3 dragonfire seals rested in Western witness coffer. The coffer gave the court what it hated most. Not a confession, a location where truth had stood before it moved again. 3 dragonfire seals rested in Western Witness coffer. The words burned across the white wood bottom while the chamber held its breath. The 3 round marks glowed faintly beneath them, each one the size of a treaty seal, each one carrying the ghost of living crown fire. Mavelle Vane did not look at the marks. He looked at Mavelle. That was how she knew he still had a path left. "This proves my niece was framed," he said. "If the seals were hidden in a Western coffer, then whoever stole them wanted suspicion on us." Mavelle held Neth close against her arm. The little Cinder Swan's head had sunk low, his stripped wing folded poorly against his side. "You recover quickly for a man whose witness ring opened the smoke path." Maravin's eyes flashed. "And you speak boldly for a ward standing over stolen royal property." Vareon Draveth's voice cut through the chamber. "Enough. Not loud. Worse. Final." He looked at the burned coffer, then at the blackened ring in his hand. "The seals were here. They are not here now. Where did they go?" All eyes turned to Mavelle, as if she had become the new lock on every door. She hated it. Hours ago, the key around her throat had marked her as shame. Now the same court wanted her to become a tool because her birds had remembered what their witnesses had ignored. She looked at Vareon. "The swans cannot burn another full trail." His jaw tightened. "What do they need?" Maraven scoffed. "Majesty, surely you will not negotiate with an aviary girl in a diplomatic chamber." Mavelle did not look away from Vareon. "Open the cages. All of them. No more iron bars. No more shame key. No one touches their feathers without witness law." The room went still. Vareon's gaze dropped to the key still hanging from her throat. Mavelle closed one hand around it. "Leave this on me until the court understands what it became. But open their cages." A long silence followed. Then Vareon turned to the captain. "Do it." Maraven stepped forward. "Majesty, the Cinder Swans are royal smoke witnesses until this theft is resolved," Vareon said. "Any hand raised against them answers to me." It was not softness. It was law. For the first time that day, Mavelle felt the court move around the birds instead of over them. A guard ran back toward the aviary. Above the hidden stair, far away, wings answered. Not strong wings, free ones. Mavelle closed her eyes for one breath. Neth stirred against her arm, and a faint thread of smoke slipped from his beak. It drifted toward the coffer, not as fire, not as proof dragged from him, but as a living creature's answer after a cage door opened somewhere behind them. The smoke entered the 3 seal marks. They brightened. Then the mark shifted, not toward the vow hall, not toward the western guest wing. North. Mavelle opened her eyes. They were moved again. Vareon came closer. "By smoke?" "By carried smoke." "What does that mean?" She knelt beside the coffer and touched the air above the blackened bottom. The seals were wrapped in something that had already crossed a smoke path. Cloth, veil, glove, something fed with bride candle wax. It carried the trail forward after the coffer opened. Maraven said, "More invention." Mavelle looked at him. "Your niece's veil was left on the vow hall floor." He paused. "Small. Enough." Vareon saw it. "The veil," Vareon said. Mavelle nodded. "Or a piece cut from it before she vanished." The smoke in the coffer thickened, then curled upward in 3 narrow strands. Each strand carried a faint gold spark. The treaty seals were not dead metal. They were living crown fire, and living fire left breath behind. The strands moved toward the north wall of the chamber. There was no door there, only a tapestry of a silver mountain and a sleeping dragon. Vareon raised one hand. "Move it." 2 guards pulled the tapestry aside. Behind it was old, blank stone. Maraven laughed softly. "A wall. How damning." Mavelle stepped closer, with Neth still in her arms. The key at her throat tapped once against her chest. She could smell it now. Cold ash. Bride perfume. Open air beyond stone. There is a smoke gate behind this, she said. The captain frowned. The north smoke gates were sealed after the border wars. Sealed to bodies, Mavelle said. Not to smoke. Vareon looked at her. Can it carry a person? Not unless someone prepared the body to pass. The room went silent. Even Mavelle stopped breathing for half a second. Mavelle looked at the wall. Bride, candle smoke in the veil, cinder feather in the wick, witness wax in the ring. Enough smoke permissions layered together, and a living person could cross where flesh should not. Vareon's expression darkened. Isara. Mavelle did not soften the truth for him. She did not vanish because she was taken. The smoke strands struck the stone wall. Black fire spread across its surface, revealing the outline of a narrow arched gate hidden beneath centuries of soot. It did not open. It only remembered opening. Then the 3 gold sparks inside the smoke flared once and vanished through the stone. Letters burned across the old wall. 3 dragonfire seals passed through North Smoke Gate. The North Smoke Gate did not open when Vareon commanded it. That was the first honest answer the old wall gave him. Dragonfire lit along his hand and struck the hidden arch, but the stone only drank the heat and returned a breath of cold ash. The 3 gold sparks had vanished through it. The treaty seals were beyond the wall now, traveling a path built for smoke, not kings. Mavelle Vane stepped into that failure like a man finding ground beneath his feet again. Majesty, he said, you see the danger. These old gates answer corrupted witness. Work. The safest course is to confine the ward, destroy the birds, and search the northern roads by royal force. Mavelle turned slowly. Destroy the birds, she repeated. Maravin's face did not change. They have served their purpose. Neth stirred weakly in her arms. Served their purpose. The same court that had called them unlucky now wanted to use their last breath and then burn what remained. Vareon heard it too. His eyes moved to the injured swan, then to the key still hanging from Mavelle's throat. No, he said. The word was not loud. It shut the chamber anyway. Maravin's smile thinned. Majesty. The seals. The seals were stolen by a path built from their pain, Vareon said. I will not open another door with it. Mavelle did not thank him. Not yet. But her grip on Neth eased. Behind them came the sound of wings. The freed Cinder Swans entered the diplomatic chamber in a low black stream. Not blazing now. Not glorious, but tired and smoke-frayed. They landed on chairbacks, chests, rafters, and the stone floor near Mavelle. Their cage marks showed in bent feathers and rubbed throats. No one laughed at them now. Fear had made the court quiet. Mavelle hated that fear had done what compassion had not. Vareon looked at her. Can they remember the gate without burning themselves hollow, if we do not force them? How? She faced the hidden arch. Smoke gates, remember permission. Isara passed through because she carried layered access. Bride, candle wax, cinder feather, witness seal, and something living. Mavelle said, You cannot know that. Mavelle looked at the wall. The gate does. The old stone exhaled. A thin line of black smoke crawled around the arch, then faded. Not enough. Mavelle understood. It needs royal fire, she said. Vareon's jaw tightened. Mine? Yes. But not as a command. His eyes sharpened. Then as what? As witness, Mavelle said. You do not break the gate. You let it show what crossed. Mavelle laughed under his breath. Now she teaches a dragon king how to use fire. Mavelle did not look at him. No. I teach him how not to burn the answer before reading it. For a moment, Vareon was silent. Then he stepped back from the wall. That small retreat struck the room harder than an advance. He lowered his hand, palm open, dragonfire burning low and controlled. Show me. Mavelle set Neth gently on a table and approached the arch. The Cinder Swans gathered behind her, their smoke rising in faint strands. She did not ask them to burn. She only lifted the old key from her throat and pressed it flat against her chest. "You wanted this to make me shame," she said, not to Mavelle alone, not to Vareon alone, but to the room that had watched. Let it witness what it did not open. The key warmed, not with magic, with proximity to truth. Vareon placed his open hand near the arch. His dragonfire did not strike. It waited. The swans breathed. Smoke gathered around the stone in thin black ribbons, joining Vareon's low gold flame. The hidden gate shuddered, not opening, only remembering. An image formed inside the ash. Ysera Vane stood before the north smoke gate in her white bridal gown, very much alive. Her veil was torn short on one side. In her hand glowed 3 dragonfire treaty seals, wrapped in smoke-dark silk. Beside her, Maravan's witness ring pressed against the stone from the other side of the passage, feeding the final permission. The court gasped. Maravan said nothing. The image moved. Ysera looked back once, not frightened, not captive, angry, impatient. Then she stepped through the smoke gate carrying the seals against her breast. Mavelle's stomach tightened. She was not taken, she said. Vareon's face had gone still. The old wall burned one final line in black fire beneath the arch. Bride Envoy crossed North Smoke Gate, alive with dragonfire seals. Maravan reached for his ring too late. Vareon Draveth already held it. The image inside the North Smoke Gate faded, but the old wall still breathed black ash, where Ysera Vane had crossed alive with the dragonfire treaty seals. The chamber above the hidden passage had gone silent in a way the court had never given Mavelle Sable before. Not pity, not respect, fear of being wrong. Maravan's voice cut through it. A smoke image is not a body. A cursed gate can be made to lie. Mavelle looked at him. Then why did your ring open its mouth? His face hardened. Vareon turned the silver-black witness ring in his hand. Bride candle wax still glistened in the carved groove beneath the crest. The Cinder Swans gathered behind Mavelle, smoke-frayed and exhausted, no longer blazing for spectacle. Neth stood on the table with his stripped wing trembling, but his head was lifted now. Vareon looked at the hidden arch. "Can the gate be followed?" Mavelle answered before Maravan could poison the question. "Not by forcing it." His eyes moved to her. She held the old Black Aviary key against her chest. The swans have given enough while caged, injured, and accused. If you want their memory to guide you one last time, they need law before command. Maravan laughed sharply. "Law for birds?" Mavelle turned on him. "Law against men who cut feathers from living witnesses." The words struck harder because Neth was standing in the room. Vareon's jaw tightened. He had ordered the cages. He had let the key hang around her throat. He had believed political shame before living memory. He did not erase any of it by speaking now, but he spoke. "By my crown fire, the Cinder Swans of the Black Swan Aviary are restored as royal smoke witnesses. No cage, blade, vow rite, bride, envoy, or crown servant may use their feathers, smoke, or bodies without open witness and living consent of their keeper." Maravan's mouth went thin. "Their keeper?" Vareon looked at Mavelle, not above her, at her. Mavelle Sable. The key against her throat warmed. For the first time all day, it did not feel like a bruise. It felt like an answer that had taken too long. The Cinder Swans lifted their wings. They did not bow. They did not crown her. They breathed. Black smoke rose from them in a single soft wave and joined Vareon's low gold flame at the North Smoke Gate. The wall did not open wide. It remembered narrowly, enough for the route to show without demanding blood from the birds. A path burned through the air. North Passage, Tower Drain, Old Smoke Balcony, Outer Ridge. Ysera had not gone far. Vareon turned to the guard captain. "North Ridge. Now." Maravan stepped back. Mavelle saw it. So did Vareon. "Bind Lord Maravan," the king said. Maravan's composure finally cracked. You would bind a Western witness on the word of an aviary ward? No, Vareon said. On my stolen seals, your waxed ring, your opened gate, and the bride you helped escape. The guards seized him. Maravan did not confess. Men like him rarely gifted truth when evidence could drag it from their hands. But when his sleeve tore, a strip of white flame silk fell out. Smoke burned at the edge. Usara's veil. The Cinder Swans hissed. Mavelle did not need them to write more. The north ridge was reached before dawn. Isara Vane stood beside the old smoke balcony with 2 Western riders and a travel cloak over her bridal gown. She still held the 3 dragonfire treaty seals wrapped in cut veil silk. When she saw Vareon, she did not weep. She smiled. You needed peace, she said. My house needed leverage. Vareon's gold eyes burned cold. You entered my vows as a thief. I entered them as a bride. No one could search. Mavelle stepped from behind him. Neth cradled carefully in her arms. Isara's smile faded at the sight of the swan. You should have stayed in your cages, she said. Mavelle's voice was quiet. That is what everyone says when witnesses survive. Isara lifted the wrapped seals toward the smoke balcony. The north gate behind her shivered, ready to swallow her through another prepared path. But this time the Cinder Swans were free. They rose behind Mavelle in a dark wave, weak but many, their wings trailing black fire through the gray dawn. They did not attack Isara. They drew every route she had taken in the sky above her. The vow candle, the altar drain, Neth's cage, Maravan's ring, the western coffer, the north smoke gate. The path surrounded her like a cage made of her own choices. The dragonfire seals flared in her hands and tore free, not to Vareon first, but to the open air where the truth had been made visible. Only then did they return to the king's palm. Isara was seized before the smoke gate could take her. By sunrise, the broken wedding court stood again in the vow hall, but the altar was stripped of white silk. Vareon revoked Isara's bride rights in public. Maravan's witness authority was burned from the treaty register. The Western envoys were held under dragon law until new terms could be written without stolen fire. Then Vareon turned to the Black Swan Aviary. The old cages were opened one by one, not for display, for release. Mavelle stood beneath the bronze doors with the black key still around her throat. Neth rested beside her, his stripped wing wrapped in soft ash cloth. The court watched without laughing now. Vareon approached slowly and stopped far enough away that the swans did not recoil. I made your care into shame, he said. Mavelle looked at him. Yes, I caged witnesses because a bride called them unlucky. Yes, I believed the room that wanted you small. Her fingers closed around the key. Yes, he accepted every answer. No defense. No royal wound placed over hers. What do I do first? He asked. Mavelle looked past him to the opened cages, the smoke-stained rafters, the birds who had remembered what liars thought smoke had swallowed. Write their names into the witness register, she said. Repair the aviary. No ceremonial cages. No feather cutting. No vow right near them without their keeper's consent. All of it, Vareon said, and remove this only when the court understands it was never proof against me. Vareon lowered his head. Then I will wait. Weeks later, the Black Swan Aviary no longer smelled of fear. It smelled of warm ash, open air, and smoke paths safely sleeping. The court called the Cinder Swans royal witnesses again. Mavelle still called them by name. And when Vareon came to the aviary, he did not ask where the swans could lead him. He asked which doors they wanted left open.